Good evening. I'm Sandy Frank, President of the League of Women Voters of Lee County. I'd like to welcome you tonight and to thank you for attending this forum to learn more about Amendments 1 and 4. This forum is in person and via Zoom. For those on Zoom, we ask that you stay muted and you can place your comments and questions in the chat that we will be monitoring. For those in person, please turn off or mute your electronic devices. This forum is sponsored by the League of Women Voters that was formed in 1920. It is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed participation of citizens in government. The League's mission is to empower voters and defend democracy. The League of Women Voters does not support or oppose candidates and/or political parties. The League does influence public policy through education and advocacy. In our educational arm, we educate the public because we believe the basis for good government is an informed electorate. The League holds educational events and provides nonpartisan educational election information through candidate forums, Vote 411, our online voter guide, and a number of other resources. We are having a Meet the Candidates event on September 24th. For Lee County candidates at the Alliance for the Arts from 6 to 8 p.m. and I invite all of you and your friends and neighbors to attend that. In addition, the League is an advocacy organization. We advocate for policy positions after careful study and consensus by our members. Information on the positions and issues of the League are available on our website and various publications. In November of this year, 6 proposed amendments to the Florida Constitution will be on every ballot in Florida. The amendments to the Florida Constitution need 60% of the vote of an amendment for the amendment to pass. The League has nonpartisan information on the pros and cons of these amendments. In addition, the League has positions and advocates for some of the proposed amendments. Tonight, we will be talking about 2 of those amendments. The first is passage of Amendment 1, which would require members of a district school board to be elected in a partisan election rather than a nonpartisan election. The League's position is to vote no on Amendment 1. The League supports public education, and a no vote would leave school board elections as nonpartisan elections with no closed primaries, allowing all voters to vote for any candidate. If it passes, there would be partisan elections for the school board. The second amendment that we're going to discuss is Amendment 4. The League's position is to vote yes on Amendment 4. Passage of Amendment 4 would limit government interference with abortion. The League has for many, many years supported healthcare access and reproductive choice. A yes vote would prevent any law from prohibiting, penalizing, delaying, or restricting abortion before viability or when necessary to protect the patient's health, as determined by the patient's healthcare provider. So we will be hearing more about each of these amendments in a few moments. In addition, I would like to mention a couple other issues that the League does support that you could participate in today. We have petitions in the back where you entered into this sanctuary on the right to clean water and for the expansion of Medicaid. So if you haven't signed those petitions, you will have an opportunity to do that tonight. I would like to thank all of those who made this event possible today, particularly the UU Church and their members, the League of Women Voters volunteers. We have many here today and many behind the scenes, and other organizations who have assisted in this effort, including NOW, Women's March Fort Myers, the Deltas, Progressive Women, and Yes on 4 and Planned Parenthood. Now I would like to present our moderator, who is the Lee County NOW president, a League member, and a longtime community advocate, Kathy Mayo.
So nice to have everybody here tonight. Wow. Well, if you're like me, you came because you wanted to know more about one or both of the amendments. Have you ever gotten, maybe in your early days of voting, you've gotten into the little booth and you looked at the ballot, which you had never seen before, and you realized, oh my gosh, I have no idea who these people are or who some of them are, and I don't know anything about those amendments. So we've come a long way, and the league has done a wonderful job of trying to educate us on what we are voting on. You can't ask for more than that. The other day we had, the Now chapter had a luncheon get-together that was for Women's Equality Day, which is the anniversary of the signing of the and verifying of Amendment 19, which extended voting rights to women. Well, every year we give people a test to see what they know and who they are and what they think about voting. And one of the questions is, have you ever run for political office? Have any of you ever run for political office? All right, look at that. Quite a few of you. You're brave. Have you ever collected signatures for a petition or for a candidate or amendment? Oh, wow. That's almost everybody. Thank you, thank you. And have you ever worked or volunteered at a voting precinct? Look at that. You know, we're doing a pretty good job, so that's good to hear. Well, our first presenter is someone a lot of us know locally, Betsy Vaughn. Betsy was a career secondary teacher for 38 years, including 19 years as an English department chair at a large high school in suburban Dallas, and 8 years here in Lee County at Estero High School. After retiring from the classroom, Betsy served on the Lee County School Board from 2018 to 2022. Currently, as a board member of the Lee County League of Women Voters, Betsy is Director of Education and a member of the League of Women Voters Florida Education Action Team. Also, Betsy is really active in the community as a volunteer for various programs, including the one where I am.
Oh no, I gotta burn it again.
Next. Oh. Yeah, it's helpful to have somebody back there because it's quite a run for me to get that. All right. So this year's election is critical for a lot of reasons. And when we talk about this election, one of the first things that
people are going to be thinking about, of course, is the presidential election. And what happens, and I'm thinking especially in 2024, is all of the things locally, especially at, I don't want to call school board at the bottom, but the ones that people in the past have said, oh, well, that's nothing. We just need to pay attention to who's going to be our president, and there's a senatorial race and all of that. But what I saw when I was on the school board, and actually even before that, because I've been kind of a political news junkie and kept up with things, is that there has been, I would say in the past 8 to 10 years, a real movement toward bottom up when you were talking about elections, okay? And I'll maybe get into a little bit more about that. Sandy talked about the league, so I'm just going to go over this really, really quickly. League of Women Voters was founded in 1920 in Chicago, just 6 months before the 19th Amendment was ratified, which of course gave women the right to vote. And why was it formed? Well, think about this. The women, without getting into woman power, this was something new for women. And of course, I'm sure most of you know a little bit of the story of the suffragettes. And this group was formed by the National American Suffrage Association. And a quote is, "It began as a mighty political experiment, and it was designed to help 20 million women to carry out their responsibilities as voters." Sandy already went through the mission of the league, so I'm not going to repeat that. I want to emphasize that we are nonpartisan, we are nonprofit, and we don't endorse candidates or parties. That said, we do research and we do educate the public on issues. And when we feel that an issue is particularly important to the mission, which is freedom, a free society, democracy, when we feel that that is particularly important, then we go for advocacy, which we are doing with Amendment 1. There are over 30 leagues, League of Women Voters in Florida. Some people don't realize that, yes, we opened our doors to men in 1974. It's an interesting time, in the 70s, and 20% are men. Okay, next, please. Okay, the language here is directly from Article 9, Section 4B of the Florida Constitution, because we need to know a little bit about school boards before I get into talking about the election of school board members. The school board shall operate, control, and supervise all free public schools within the school district and determine the rate of school district taxes. Next. Okay. School boards are also, and there's another list there, adopting curriculum, behavior standards, establishing schools, and of course that's something big in Lee County, isn't it? Adding schools, and where will they be? The attendance areas, personnel matters, bargaining, collective bargaining, standards of ethical conduct, sometimes that's difficult, instructional personnel and school administrators. Now, something you need to understand is it's not like in Lee County, we have 7 school board members, and it varies, I think, from 5. I think 1 or 2 of the districts have maybe 9 on their board, some of the districts that are even larger than Lee County. But it's not like the school board members meet every day and we develop the curriculum, et cetera. Of course, this is done by the staff in the school district. That said, when major changes come about, we're informed of that. We are, school board, I say we, it's old habit, I'm not on the board anymore. The school board is educated about all kinds of things, and especially budgetary things, and that plays really big into new schools and the placement of schools,
All I
et
have to do
cetera.
is hit go.
So, in light of these responsibilities, what you as voters need to do is consider the huge impact that the school board members have on so many aspects of the community. And that's whether or not you have children in the schools. Because remember, a strong public school system really reflects on the quality of life that we have anywhere in the US. Okay, next, please. All right, so this is a big vote for Floridians. And Sandy did mention that we are going to have 6 amendments this year that are going to be voted on, and we'll hear about Amendment 4 after I'm done speaking. The focus again is going to be on Amendment 1. All right, currently, nonpartisan elections, keep that in mind. And this came about in 1998. Florida school board elections have been nonpartisan since a majority, that's 64% in that particular election, of Floridians passed. This is another constitutional amendment that some people want to have replaced with this one. Citizens decided in that election by 64% that they wanted nonpartisan elections in Florida. The other thing is to pass an amendment in Florida. It's not just a simple majority. You need to have a 60% vote, okay, 60%. So you need, and that's something you keep in mind for the next speaker as well. I'm sure she'll mention that. Let's see, anything else? Oh, closed primary. We're going to get into closed primary now. So next slide, please. All right. In 2023, the last legislative session is what I'm talking about. The House and the Senate approved bills. HJR 31 is one of them, proposing an amendment, and this was one of the amendments, to the state constitution, requiring school board members to be elected in partisan elections. Now, we do have a Lee County connection for this. And of course, this is not a vote that's just going to concern Lee County. It's going to affect, it's the Constitution of the state of Florida. But one of the 2 people who put forth this joint resolution was Representative Spencer Roach. Are any of you in his district? Okay. Then we have 5 or 6, let's see, 5, 6 or so co-sponsors. One of them was also from the local delegation, Ms. Jenna Persons Mullica was the other one. So maybe those are familiar names to you. And then of course, it was signed by Governor DeSantis. The rest of the information is on the screen, so you can look at that. The proponents, of course, they had to have a reason for this. Well, I'm seeing somebody go no, but yeah. Their reason was transparency. Okay, that was a big reason. Let's make the school board elections more transparent and let's make them comparable to our other elections. Now, I'm going to try not to use personal experience very often, but I'll just say this from my personal view. I don't think there are very many voters out there who by election day don't know the ideological stance of the people that are running. And if it was important back in 2018 when I ran, it's become in 2024 even a much bigger deal as school board elections become more and more political. Okay, next, please. The ballot language is in front of you. In case you can't see it, I can't see the printed. I thought I would be able to, but I can't read it from there. But real quickly, proposing amendments. I just lost my place. Where am I? Okay, proposing amendments to the state constitution to require members of a district school board to be elected in a partisan election rather than a nonpartisan election. And that's really the heart of it, to change it to partisan. And to specify that the amendment only applies to elections held on or after the November 2026 general election. Now, that actually might be misleading because we would tend to think of a November election, but that actually means the the 2026 election cycle would be when this would be enacted if 60% or more of the Florida voters approve this. Okay? And just so you know, I don't know if the ballot language has changed slightly, but this was when this PowerPoint was done in early August. This was the exact wording there. Okay, next, please. So we tend to repeat things. As Kathy said, I was a teacher, high school teacher for 38 years. And at least for my kids, unless you repeated things, some people said at least 3 times, especially as I get older now, not that you're older, I see all different ages out here. Maybe sometimes you have to repeat it more than 3 times, but especially for me, if it's somebody's name. But again, a yes vote would change all Florida school board elections to partisan, and a no vote would keep the Florida school board elections non-partisan. Okay, 60% of the people would have to vote to approve this. Okay, and that's something else that you want to keep in mind. Next, please. So, and this is kind of a logical thing. Who can vote in nonpartisan elections now? Well, because the elections are nonpartisan, everybody who is a registered Florida voter, everybody. Now, of course, you have districts and different things like that. You can't vote for somebody who's in a district that you don't belong to, but you know what I'm saying. There's nothing like the Republicans only vote in Republican primaries, the Democrats only vote in Democratic primaries. Everyone votes. So, in other words, what we are saying is, in a partisan election, we go from being open to everyone who's a registered voter to a closed primary. Florida is a closed primary state. Okay. Local elections, including the school board, are often decided by the primary, and that's actually on the next slide. Okay, so how is Amendment 1 going to change this? And to me, this is where it got a little bit complicated at first. So can we go on to slide 11, please? Closed primary state. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means different things in different states. This afternoon, when I was doing my final little notes on what I was going to say tonight, I tried to find, like 27 states have closed, but no, there are a lot of complications on what the states, how they decide. The closest I could get on this is 14 states and the District of Columbia are closed for congressional and state level elections. Again, if you go to, I went to Ballotpedia, and you will learn more than you ever wanted to know about various states and all the different things that govern their elections. Okay, so if school board elections become partisan, they're closed. In a closed primary, only voters registered with a political party. Well, what does that mean? A major political party. If you're a member of the, I don't know, what we make up a party of the Orange Party. Oh, that was a bad choice. If you're a member of the, I want to think of a different, what's a good color? Green, all right, the Green Party, which is an actual party. Green Party members, no, you don't get a primary. Libertarians, no, you don't get a primary. And for the 30% on average of Florida voters, 30% who are NPA without party affiliation, and that 30% number is also accurate right now for Lee County, you don't get to vote either. That doesn't seem quite fair, does it? So let's go on to the next slide. The universal primary, okay, UPC, universal primary contest. So it doesn't seem quite fair. So there is an exception. The exception is where only get to vote your party if one party has candidates. Okay, so one party has candidates, and remember we're talking about major parties, and the other party doesn't, then it becomes an open vote. Okay? If there are no candidates on the other side, no, in other words, no opposition, then even if it's the, I don't know, the Chartreuse party is the only one with the candidates and you're not a member of the Chartreuse party, you can still vote. That sounds fair, doesn't it? So it opens it up and it becomes universal. And the winner of that primary would win the race, and there wouldn't need to be a November election. Actually, that was in the notes that I got with this. I'm thinking, don't quote me, but I'm not sure if it if they have to get, Sandy, do you know, or anybody else? If nobody gets 50% of the 3 candidates, if they'd have a runoff? I'm not sure on that one. And I've gone through this about 4 times and I just like, oh. But anyway, in essence, the primary becomes the general election. Again, it was to take away that very unfair thing that would disenfranchise so many people. Now, let's go on to the next slide. The exception to the exception, I guess you could say. How many of you have heard of the write-in loophole? Hard to see. Oh, not. There are a lot of people who haven't. And I'll have to admit, I was really hazy on it. And all of us at the league, we all repeated to each other and until we got it really straight in our heads what the loophole said and what it did. If only one party has candidates and they face no opposition, the primary then becomes an election, right? As we already said that. Well, what if somebody decides to be a write-in candidate? Somebody declares himself or herself to be a write-in candidate. A candidate can declare to be a write-in candidate for the November election. The write-in candidate specifies no party affiliation and runs only in the general election. The write-in loophole then closes the primary to all but members of the party holding the primary. So, if the Chartreuse party has, let's say, just 2 people that are running, and then everybody's gonna universal primary, right? And everybody can vote for one or the other. But what if, before the deadline, somebody comes along and declares himself or herself a write-in candidate? Well, guess what happens then? That primary closes. So in that case, only Chartreuse party members can vote. That is the write-in loophole. Now, I'm going to read part of this so I don't misstate anything. Just follow along, folks. Candidates do it intentionally. Why? To close the primary to only their own party. Both parties have used this. The write-in candidate often doesn't even campaign or have a budget. This happens across Florida. And some of you may be aware that there was a very good example, which I'm not going to quote, but there was an example of this in Lee County in the last primary. So, but I'll emphasize both parties have done this and it happens across the state. The write-in name then in November, the write-in name doesn't appear on the ballot. So what are you going to see in the general election? You're going to see the name of the Chartreuse party winning candidate of those 2 I mentioned, and a blank line. What are the odds that the blank line write-in candidate is going to win? But anyway, how has this affected Florida elections? In 2024, write-in candidates across the state excluded 2 million Floridians. That doesn't mean all of them intended to vote, but there were 2 million potential voters there. Between 1998 and 2022, over 8 million voters were excluded from voting in Florida primaries. So obviously it defeats the purpose of the amendment, the universal primary, and just take a moment to consider how this affects you as a voter. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, just a little graphic here that you can look at for a minute. I'm not going to read it to you. Okay, next slide, please. Here's a good did you know. Here's something else that came out of the 2023 legislative session. Did you know that non-resident partisan candidates, of course, they're probably unfamiliar with your non-resident partisan candidates, that probably, unless they just moved from the county, may be unfamiliar with your local district, may choose to focus more on a narrow political agenda on local needs. So you don't have to be a resident to run. If you win, then you need to move to that county. Now, just like to stop for just a moment and think about that. What does that mean? Non-residents. Why are they doing it? Okay, let's go on to the next slide. So here we have considerations. We're going to repeat it again. Arguments in favor of Amendment 1. If you favor it, you vote yes. If you're against Amendment 1, you're going to vote no. Next slide, please. Okay, so partisan candidates may support, and we're talking about partisan candidates that traditionally will get the approval of their party and be supported by their party. We're also talking about partisan candidates who may live elsewhere but be running in your county, in Lee County, let's say. These people, as partisan candidates, stated partisans, where you see an R or a D on the ballot, they may also support their party's agenda rather than using firsthand knowledge and experience of the local district's need, of the issues and the best interests to provide the appropriate guidance and leadership. When this was, when I was on the board, it was kind of, oh, you don't ever say your party out loud, when there's a audience out there in the middle of a board meeting. And again, if the people voting for you didn't realize it by election day, they're surely going, well, they did with me, but they're surely going to know what party you probably affiliate with. I always thought, and I'm adding this from my own experience, I always thought it's kind of silly, because why do you want to be a school board member? For the community, the good of the community. And on the top of the list is always for the good of the students and to have the best possible district. A high functioning, effective school board needs collaboration and it needs compromise. And if you think about the biggest issues in national politics now, you know, some of them don't really affect in any but the biggest stretch, don't even come near to affecting what a school board member is going to vote on. You know, a school board member is not going to vote on policy with Israel and the Middle East. A school board member is not going to vote on the issues that we're going to be discussing with in the next presentation on Amendment 4. Think about it. There are so many federal issues that, yeah, they impact, but it's not something the board member is going to vote on. Now, advantages and disadvantages. Okay, so one of the things, if we go back, remember what the proponents said about this: more transparency and more in line with voting, the way partisan voting is done. Let's see, could we have the next slide, please? Okay. So arguments against a no vote, they're on the screen there for you. Give you a minute. Okay, next slide, please. More arguments against a no vote. And these bear some study. You know, when the school board and the district becomes extremely politicized, there are going to be people in the community, volunteers in the community, that maybe back off, that don't really want to do the things that the school districts really depend on. The volunteers that come in and they help teachers and librarians and all kinds of things that they do in the schools. They serve on school PTOs, advisory committees, etc. So volunteers, I'm not sure if I'm on the same page here. Oh, I can't see that one. Excuse my squinting. Anyway, I'm just going to go on with the notes. Do the next slide, please. Okay, more against the no.
It's not against the no, it is the no.
It is the no, yeah. What did I say?
Against the no.
Oh. You know, I did that on purpose, Kathy Mayo, just to see if you were paying attention. No, I didn't, because I'm trying to read what's up there, which is actually a little bit, I said to the tech person, oh yeah, I can read that. And I'm like, maybe not. So when we're thinking about voting no on this, because we don't want to go to partisan, we want to keep it the way it is, it may dissuade volunteers. It may dissuade diversity. You're going to have, as I said earlier, compromise is when people can actually talk. But, and we've seen this in Congress lately, when people are so politicized, sometimes they refuse to talk. So that's another thing I would add to the list. Okay, next. Okay, so we have some more against Amendment 1. Okay, on that list, so take a minute. Okay, so we're getting to the end here. Consider how politicization and partisanship within school boards could create ripple effects. Some of the ones that I just mentioned, maybe fewer candidates, people that have wonderful ideas, but they don't have the backing of a party, nor are they locked into, let's say, the agendas of a particular party. There's so many ways that, you know, we have a loss. The last thing on there, loss of the local control might be the one that gets to the most people. Loss of local control. How many of you feel like it's a good thing if school in your community have local control, that local control is important? Just yeah, quite a few of you. So we're talking about so many things that would diminish any kind of local control. So we're still on that. Let's go to the next slide. So, surprise. What does the League of Voters of Florida and of Lee County, what do we recommend? A no vote on Amendment 1. When you vote no, that means you want to keep it the way it is. You want it nonpartisan. And why do you want it nonpartisan? Because you want to see everyone have a chance to vote, to not disenfranchise large groups of people, to kind of push away politicization and agendas. Agendas often not just that come from outside of the county, but also might even come from out of the state. Go on the supervisor of election page and take a look at where some of the donations come from. Okay, next. So this is, and I don't know if you can read them from your seat, but the next couple slides, and later we can do something if you really want to look at all of these. You go to the next slide. I believe it's going to say thank you. So next slide. Thank you for your participation. And I ran a lot longer than I thought I would. Anybody have a question or a comment? I'm gonna kind of half blinded here by anybody. If you do, step up to one of these microphones up front so the people, if they're on Zoom, can hear you. How many of you, just for my ego, how many of you learned something? And I can tell you, I've learned a lot of some things, and I hope many of you will consider, if you're not a League of Women Voters member, that you consider joining with us, because it's a great group. So thank you. Appreciate your time and attention. It's gonna escape. Now I welcome your question.
So my question is, how do you see partisan school board members affecting the new laws that require the election of superintendents?
Okay, say that again. How do I see?
Do you see that there would be any interaction or ramifications of this amendment because superintendents are now elected?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The school board, they're the boss of the superintendent. And if a superintendent, at least in this county and this is the only county, this is only the only school district that I've ever, I've lived here for 19 years, but I'm not sure how this works. I understand there's some smaller counties where everybody gets along and I understand, I think they exist in, I don't know, those of you who've lived elsewhere, maybe that's a fairy tale, but no. A superintendent who is selected by the school board, it's a very lengthy process. During the 4 years I was on the board, we had 3 superintendents in that 4 years. We had Dr. Greg Atkins, who then left, and the current interim, Dr. Ken Savage, was an interim while we interviewed for a permanent superintendent. And don't you know that when these people interview, they're going to at least somewhat color their responses with things that they feel are going to be responsive in the board. Does that make sense? And so then Dr. Bernier left, and I was off the board by then, and Dr. Savage now is back as a superintendent. The balance of the board has changed since I was on the board. It's changed somewhat. I'm just going to say it. And the responses of that same interim superintendent now, who was interim superintendent then, the responses have changed also. And to be fair, again, the board is the boss, and the superintendent needs to get along with the board. So does that make sense? Sort of? Or does it answer your question?
It doesn't answer my question, but I think my question is more complicated than that.
Well, yeah, because,
This is what I'm thinking about. Betsy.
okay.
Superintendent is now elected by the voters.
Mhm.
Okay. And not partisan, but elected by the voters.
No, it's partisan.
It is partisan. Well,
It is
makes-
partisan, absolutely.
That makes where my head's going even worse. Because then you can have school board members and a superintendent running from a partisan position, making it very difficult for local interests to be expressed through the school board. Even when the school board works for the, when the superintendent works for the board, is no longer really working for the board. They're working for the electorate.
Yes, and that's why I think I said a one-word response initially,
Right.
absolutely, that it has an effect. Anybody else? I've gone over my time. So again, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
We are delighted to have our next speaker, Danielle Singleton. She drove down here from Sarasota. Danielle is a native of Sarasota and serves as the manager of volunteer and community programs at Planned Parenthood of Southwest and Central Florida. In this role, she executes community engagement initiatives across the Planned Parenthood service area. And she can tell you what that is. She is a proud FSU alumnus and holds memberships with Delta Sigma Theta sorority, Sarasota Black Caucus, and the League of Women Voters. In 2022, she was a candidate for school board in Sarasota County, District 1. Danielle is a leadership enthusiast with graduations from several programs, including Leadership Sarasota and Gulf Coast Leadership Institute. This year, she received the Emerging Leader Award from the Glasser Schoenbaum Organization and is a 2024 Trailblazer honoree from Suncoast Women of Action. I first met Danielle last June when she came to Lee County because now and a number of organizations decided we needed to get organized if we were all going to be involved in the petition process. So we invited lots of different organizations and we had like a training session and a chance to talk about how we would work together. And she came down and helped train us and got us excited. And since then, we've been really close buddies because we do a lot of Zooming as we work on this project together. So I'm really glad that she could be here today. I want to just mention a couple of things. In the back, we have lots of goodies for you. One of them are these palm cards. Take a bunch of these with you. And if you've got folks that you're talking with and they don't seem to understand Amendment 4, give them one of these. Leave them in restrooms. You know, just get them out there so people can see them. Another thing that that the Yes on 4 people have asked us to do is to, if you know you're definitely voting for Amendment 4, fill out one of these pledge cards and we'll return it to them. And then they will know what kind of information to send you and what not to send you. And you can also volunteer on this one. So thank you very much. And Danielle, we are ready to hear you.
Betsy, Danielle, and Kathy, who's a fabulous moderator. I'd like to remind everyone, if you're not registered to vote, you have until October 7th to register and be sure and to vote informed. You should, as was mentioned earlier, look at your sample ballot. You can get information on all the candidates and the proposed amendments on vote411.org. And there's also a lot of information on the websites that were mentioned today. The Yes on 4 and the League of Women Voters Florida and League of Women Voters Lee County, and now also has information that will be of assistance to you. So, and we will be sending out some of the resources that you saw tonight as well. So thank you very much, and we've got to make this happen. Thank you.
What a yard sign for Yes on 4. We have some